that when my government finds out what you people did, they're going to kick your ass. And for me to come back, and my government did find out, they knew exactly what happened to me. They know exactly what happened to my little baby boy. And they're covering up for political purposes. My name is Scott Loper. I'm going to tell you an incredible but true story. I'm an ex-police officer from New Jersey. I'm an American citizen. I was held and tortured in a Canadian prison. They locked me into a cage. They had a steam radiator, and they had a pipe tapped off of it, and they would shower me until my skin began to blister and peel. I was illegally held for 4 years and tortured into submission. I had surveillance evidence, hundreds and hundreds of hours of audio and video surveillance against Canadian police officers involved in narcotics dealing. They had a protected drug dealer in that townhouse, and working off of information obtained from their protected drug dealer, they busted bigger drug dealers, stole their drugs, and then had their protected drug dealers sell it for profit. In 2000, I moved into a townhome and discovered almost immediately that there were criminal activities being conducted next door. To my surprise, I found that those criminal activities were being conducted by the Durham Regional Police of Ontario, Canada, the drug squad in particular. The Toronto Star chief investigative reporter was ready to run a news story in August of 2006 because he had obtained all the facts. Of course, being in Canada, police corruption and the charges that I were making were nothing new by 2006. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police had conducted an investigation of their own and learned about me and about the criminal activities of the Durham Regional Police. However, the night before the story was to come out, we received a phone call from the investigative reporter, who I'll leave unnamed, and he told my attorney and I on a conference call that he couldn't publish the story. We begged him to. We said, "Why, Rob? Why can't you do that?" He said, "I have children. I can't." Our government knows of the events I'm about to tell you. When I returned, there were 2 congressional investigations. The first congressional investigation was conducted by Congressman Rob Andrews, 2nd District, New Jersey. Congressman Andrews wrote to Condoleezza Rice and requested that these allegations of illegal incarceration and torture be looked into. Then Western Hemispheric Director of the State Department, a gentleman named Keys Davison, wrote back and said that there is no record of this incident. In fact, there was no record that I was ever in Canada at all. No driver's license, no credit cards, no record that I had ever lived there, and yet I lived there for 11 years. Understandable if you're holding and torturing an American citizen that you're going to delete him from governmental databases. In 2007, House Majority Leader Congressman Steny Hoyer conducted another congressional investigation into the allegations of illegal incarceration and torture, this time providing proof to the State Department that I had been in Canada. The State Department returned, and apparently the Canadian government told them, "Oh, that's Scott Loper," because the State Department document indicated that the Canadian government admitted to holding me and that they had not notified the United States in accordance with the Vienna Convention, Article 36. That's a violation of international law. The State Department refuses to pursue that, so we had hopes that Congressman Steny Hoyer would pursue it. Congressman Steny Hoyer was provided privileged information from the State Department regarding my case, and at that time Congressman Steny Hoyer has decided that he was not going to ask any questions and that he was not going to pursue the illegal incarceration and torture of an American citizen, one of his own constituents. The reason that this is so important is Jose Mccain was an illegal Mexican murderer of 2 young girls in Texas. He received the personal support of President Bush because the United States had failed to notify Mexico of his incarceration. The president said, and I quote, "A perceived failure to comply with Article 36 of the Vienna Convention would do irreparable harm to the United States moral leadership in the world and put American citizens abroad at risk." And the president's correct. I am that example. I am the reason that international treaties need to be honored. My surveillance devices were eventually detected, and at that time I was illegally arrested, taken to a mental facility for a 3-day evaluation because I had wild stories about police dealing drugs. Doctors found nothing wrong, and we have the medical proof of that. And they said, "Mr. Loper, this is a hospital, not a hotel. You have to go." I had nowhere to go, so I ended up at a men's shelter. I called my wife, and I begged her to go to federal authorities, and I begged her to stick together and to tell the truth. She said, "I can't," and she was sobbing. 5 minutes later, 4 or 5 Durham Regional Police cars showed up. They handcuffed me, beat me, threw me into the back of a patrol car, and took me to the hellhole that they called the Whitby Jail. Whitby Jail was built in 1854, so it was not a facility with modern amenities. You can certainly use your own imagination to visualize what the sub-basement solitary confinement cell would have been like at the Whitby Jail. I'll tell you what it was like. I could put my palms on each wall. There was a hole in the floor used for lavatory purposes. It also provided a conduit for the cockroaches and spiders. They left me in the dark, and I was covered with cockroaches that had been there since the 1800s. They had a well-established home there. Cockroaches in the dark in the beginning is enough to make you lose your mind just by that. But they would take me from there, and they locked me into a cage of the type that you would take a large dog to the vet in. And they had a steam radiator, and they had a pipe tapped off of it, and they would shower me until my skin began to blister and peel. Still have the scars. And tell me that your life would be a hell of a lot easier, Mr. Loper, if you would just stop with these wild stories about police dealing drugs. I told them to go to hell for a long time. I had nothing at all to hold on to except the fact that I was an American and that I represented America to these criminals, and that they had intimidated everyone involved in their criminal activities to shut them up, but they weren't going to intimidate me. So through the torture and through the darkness and the cockroaches, the only thing I had to hold on to was the fact that I'm an American, and I'm going to show you what Americans are like. And I screamed, and I cried alone in my cell. But there was no way that they were going to see that Americans could be broken, that Americans could be intimidated, that Americans could be tortured into submission, that you've got me confused with somebody from some other country. And that's what I held on to. And when I came back to my own country, I felt for sure they're going to get you people. But when I got back, and my government did everything that they could do to cover it up, even though we know they know the truth, and the documents indicate that they know the truth, that hurt as much as the torture, if not more.